This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth. That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
So this is a very long email from Robert. Very well thought out. Robert, I apologize that I can't read the whole email. So the summarization of this email is about a concept that you and I have kicked around many times on the show about an NFL developmental league. But we have this concept nailed. So we're available. We will come in and we will tell you, we will lay it out for you and tell you exactly how this can be done. We are the sickos that on a random day in March when the spring league is going on, the two of us have this nailed. Like, we know exactly what needs to be done. We know exactly how to get there. Maybe we need some suits, some lawyers to come in and help us like figure out the injury settlements and all that good stuff. But we have this concept nailed. So we're available.
22.
Hello, everybody. We are always available.
Always available.
Evan Lazar and Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22, here with you for the next couple of hours. Alex behind the glass as well. It's Alex, and Evan. We're all too many Alexes around me right now. I need to have nicknames or something. But
let's get Alex Francisco in here.
Oh yeah, we can have an Alex off. Who's the best Alex that is connected to Patriots.com? Not all. All the way for some of us over there, but connected. Anyways, we are going to get into Patriots OTAs on Monday. We were out at OTAs, so we'll discuss Drake May, Stefon Diggs being at Patriots practice. I also want to touch on, after we do the OTA observations, I want to touch on David Andrews' retirement ceremony, which we were both at, which I thought was just a really awesome event, awesome 45 minutes or so there, celebrating the career of David Andrews. But I want to start with OTAs. I know that's what everybody's really on their minds. We're going to get to Diggs and how he looked at practice yesterday, but the place I want to start was what I thought was Drake May's best practice of the spring. And I understand that kind of sounds crazy, like we're grading every single practice in spring. I get if you sit here and say, relax, right? It's May, it's June. How much does this stuff really matter? But just looking at it through what we saw out there on Monday, Alex, I felt like Drake looked the most comfortable that he has in the three practices that we've seen, and we started to see some of those high-level throws that we saw from him last year on a couple of plays. And then he had a real run of 8 or 9 completions in a row at one point where he looked really sharp throughout team drills. So we started the show in the last 2 weeks about maybe a learning curve or some developmental things going on with Drake May in this offense. So I thought it was only fair to start with the fact that he had a good practice the other day and showed some signs of progress within the framework of this system.
Yeah, and this is where, it's tough because it's not linear. It'll be linear from here on out. We'll see 3 minicamp practices next week, and then it's on a training camp at the end of July, so they won't practice again without us there to some extent for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
But it's tough to say, yeah, he's making progress, he's building towards something, just because, we didn't see what happened in between the practices. They had one since then, I think again today, right? Is their last OTA practice?
Yeah, they had one yesterday and today.
It might be tomorrow then. I don't think they have 3 days in a row.
Okay.
It might be tomorrow then, but they'll have one more. So, you can't say definitively like he's trending in the right direction, but in front of us, he's trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to see this time of year. It's just about progress. It's just about getting better. And I can't say for sure yesterday was his best practice of the spring in total because we haven't seen all of them. It'd be hard to imagine he did better than that. That's exactly what you want it to look like in the spring. They were moving, just smooth operation, in and out of the huddle.
Yeah.
No wasted time at the line of scrimmage. Ball's not hitting the ground. Smooth and comfortable is the best way I could put it.
Yeah, I think there's always, with all these practices, we're watching the practice, but we're not hearing the practice, and we don't know the practice script. So there's always questions in my back of my mind that I try to keep in mind about. We don't know what's being coached, right? We don't know if they're in the middle of a period where they're doing a lot of, short yardage, third down stuff, and that's why the ball is not getting pushed down the field. Or they're telling the defense, hey, let's let's stay off the quarterback here in terms of the pass rush, and let's tone it down a bit so that we can get some true passing in here without the effect of him having to take a sack or what have you. So you never know any of those types of contexts, but a couple.
Well, the interesting thing yesterday was Josh McDaniels told us they were going to be running some stuff they hadn't done before, so we know there was at least. And I think that's a lot of spring practices, so maybe it's not that big of a deal, but like that element was in play.
So I made that point yesterday on Unfiltered, and I think it's also another piece of context to this. When you practice against the same defense over and over again, and both sides are practicing right now their basic installation, like their foundation of their offense and defensive schemes and systems. So when you practice week in and week out, and you're now on practice number 6, 7, 8, 9 of OTAs and things like that, when you have veteran players and good players on the defensive side, they start to recognize plays and they start to kind of cheat plays a little bit. I thought last week when we were out at practice that Robert Spillane just was all over several plays that they were running, and it dawned on me, and I thought maybe, okay, he's a really good processor and a really good play diagnoser, so maybe he just has seen this play run like 6 times already, and he's like, all right, you're not going to get me this time on this. So the element of Josh McDaniels telling us before practice that he was going to call some plays they haven't run yet in practice was not lost on me, because maybe that uncertainty kind of put a little bit of doubt in the defense, right? Where the defense didn't know exactly what was coming like they might have in prior practices. So that's a factor of it too. But just in an individual throw basis, what I thought was most, I guess, encouraging about Drake May was that when Drake May is at his best, he's just ripping it, right? There's not a lot of thought that's going into his throws. There's not a lot of hesitation. Greg Bedard talks a lot about the hitch, or, the kind of double pump, if you will. Like, you don't see any of that. You just see him playing free, playing loose, and letting it rip. And then also on top of that, you see a lot of the extra quarterback stuff, like coverage manipulation, pumping the safety off, or moving somebody with his eyes, or throwing off platform, obviously, extending the play, throwing off platform. And I thought a couple of the throws that were really standout throws to me had all of those elements. And that's when I know that Drake May's feeling it. Like, that's when he's in a groove. So the whole shot to Kayshon Boutte on the corner route, right? He eats up cover 2, and they play that coverage, and you have the split safeties and the corner underneath. He's going to pump off the corner underneath, and then he's going to rip the whole shot. And he did that exact thing to Kayshon Boutte on that play. And I said, the rhythm, the timing, even the manipulation, like all of that is Drake May when he's at his best, when he's the most comfortable. The wheel route to Ramondre Stevenson, little off platform, move to the left, drop down the arm angle a little bit, and just rip it like that. Those are the types of plays that you see him make that you really are excited about in terms of his future in this league. So those were a couple that stood out to me as sort of like the highlight plays of the day for him. But all of those throws, again, are getting back to this playmaker mode of Drake May and what he's able to do from the pocket, and manipulating coverage and moving coverage with his eyes, or pump fakes, or body language, and being able to throw off platform and make plays off platform. That's what the Patriots have when he's at his best. And so that was very encouraging to see. And I have another thought on that, but what were some of the things that stood out to you just specifically about his day?
Yeah, again, I'll go back to what I said before. I just think he looked more comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? We talked in the last show about just a little hesitation. Was he totally comfortable with what he was looking at, and all of that? And this just felt more picking up where he left off. It didn't feel... That's what was so surprising about McDaniels before practice, saying they were running some new things. None of that felt new.
Yeah.
If McDaniels hadn't said that, I might be sitting here saying, well, it helped out for Drake May that it seemed like they were doing a lot of stuff he was comfortable with, because he looked, and maybe he's comfortable with the new stuff, but he looked very comfortable with all of it. So I just think we know he's more of a, like that Josh Allen type, right? He's just going to kind of see and go. He's not somebody that's going to compute all the different things, and it's just sort of read and react to it. And I think he was more in that mode and playing more free and was more of that, had more of that gunslinger mentality, as much as you can have in a spring practice, granted. I think he was playing more with that mentality, which he's in his comfort zone when he's doing that, which is good. This was part of the worry about Josh McDaniels' offense and people worrying with the Brady offense, right? Are they going to tailor it too much to that and take away some of what Drake May does? Well, this was him being able to do what he wants to do, what he does best in the context of that offense.
So I think that's an important point of all this. And there was a lot of talk before practice with the assistant coaches, and then that carried into practice about these new wrinkles that the Patriots are supposedly adding into this offense. And it should be said that this is the foundation of this scheme is still the Josh McDaniels playbook. Right? That is the roots of the offense. But they have a melting pot. They really have a melting pot of coaches that have been in different systems and been in different places that they can pull from and pull ideas from. I think chief among them being Thomas Brown, who's got that pass game coordinator title as well as being the tight ends coach. And he comes from Sean McVay's tree. He also coached under Frank Reich as well, who's West Coast oriented, different branches of the West Coast offense. And I was really curious to see as we get into the season, like which fork did they go down? Like, which path did they go down within the West Coast tree? Because you have the West Coast offense going all the way back to, like, Bill Walsh and the 49ers in the 80s. But then you have, like, the traditional West Coast coaches, which is what Alex Van Pelt was part of. Mike Holmgren, Alex Van Pelt, Mike McCarthy, those types of guys. Then you have the Shanahan tree of the West Coast offense. Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, of course, at the top. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, all those guys.
Anybody I've yelled about in the last 2 years.
And then you have the Andy Reid iteration of this offense, which has really been called, Mike Lombardi always calls it like West Coast college, right? It's really
it's more air raid.
It's adaptive of the air raid and the West Coast offense kind of coming together to fit the quarterbacks of today. And Frank Reich is obviously offshot on that Andy Reid tree. So all these guys are connected in that they speak similar languages and they have similar core philosophies of how they want to move the football, but they all have a little bit of twist on all of their versions. And there's Norv Turner too, which is a whole Kevin O'Connell and whatever. So
I like the Kevin O'Connell one the best.
Yeah, so the Kevin O'Connell one is similar, I would say, to the Shanahan tree. I think there's a lot of similarities, but what I'm getting at is the West Coast college, the West Coast mash with the air raid is, in my opinion, where I would rather see them go with Drake May, which is what Patrick Mahomes is obviously running in Kansas City. They're running a version of it in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. And that the main reasons are, one, it does a nice job of using the quarterback's mobility to leverage the defense. So whether it's RPOs, read options in the case of Philadelphia, and just in general, just using the quarterback as a guy that you have to account for. The other reason why I really like that part of the tree for Drake specifically is that it's predominantly shotgun. And I didn't break down his plays on Monday based off of under center versus shotgun splits. I didn't get that into it. But last year as a rookie, there's no doubt that there was a split between shotgun and under center. That makes sense. He didn't really play much at all under center in college, and I bet you he didn't do it much in high school either, because you just don't do it at the high school and college level as much as they used to. So what I'm getting at is that tree is going to be like 80 to 85% shotgun. And I'm talking mostly about neutral situations, like fourth quarter, end of game, and you're just trying to run out the clock. Everybody is going to probably be under center when that happens. But when we're talking about in the middle of the game, when the game is being decided, Philadelphia is like 85-90% under center, or shotgun. And when they go under center, it's because they're doing the tush push. It's not because they're actually running a playbook from under center. Now, when we talk to the coaches and then some of the reporting that I've seen from other people on the beat about where they might be going, it sounds more like they're trying to put in McVay style stuff. Now, McVay style stuff would be under center, wide zone, duo runs from under center with boots and motion, of course, motion at the snap with jet motion, things like that. So if that's where they end up going with it, and again, I'm not saying that it is or isn't, it's just speculating here. If that's the way that they end up going with it, he's going to be under center a lot more. And Josh McDaniels has notoriously been under center a lot more just in his career as an offensive coach. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Like, I'm not concerned that it's not going to go well. I'm not certain that it's going to go well. And so we'll see what happens. Now, I'm encouraged by the fact that maybe, Boots, I think, would be good for him. I think that he's got great athleticism, a great ability to throw on the run. You get him outside the pocket, which helps the offensive line. Now you're not traditionally pass blocking all the time, too, so that makes it easier, in theory, to protect the quarterback if you can sell it. And he can pick up yards with his legs himself if there's nothing open down the field and just eat up the underneath stuff. So you almost don't even need to put a guy in the flat because he kind of is the flat, right? He's going to influence the flat defender to take him.
It keeps teams honest in the run game, too.
Yeah.
Which they're still going to be running the ball a lot.
Yeah, so if the plan is wide zone boot and trying to do that, look, they've been trying to do that since 2022. And failed. They've been trying to run a wide zone boot scheme or incorporate more of that stuff for eons, like it feels like. But maybe they can kind of get it done this time with the coaches that they have on staff with McDaniels and be able to pull it off this time. So we'll see. But that's where I think everybody's sort of guessing that they're going, is more towards that McVay influence and being under center and using motion to undress the defense and manipulate the defense, and then having bootlegs and half boots and all that good stuff. But I do kind of hope that they don't completely ignore some of the stuff that Thomas Brown could bring in from the Frank Reich school.
Sure.
And some of that stuff as well from the gun runs and the RPOs and things of that good nature. So we'll see. They have to put it on film first. I think watching these practices, you can glean some of the things that they're going to do schematically, but it never really takes hold until you can break it down on tape and see exactly what they're doing. So
right.
Do you have any other thoughts on that, or should we move on to the next thing?
I think you covered it pretty completely. I'll just say this, because we do this every year and we have this conversation, and it's probably not going to go anywhere, but I'll do my part and say it. Pistol. Like, that's the happy medium between under center and shotgun. Pistol. So let's incorporate some pistol.
Sure. And we've talked about the pistol a lot, and one of the coaches you hate, really what I think is probably Mike McDaniel's best, what's the word, like schematic twist, is that he took the Kyle Shanahan offense and adapted it to fit Tua by running all of the same concepts that they run in the Shanahan offense from the pistol.
To be
instead
fair,
of under center.
I've never said Mike McDaniel's not a good offense coordinator, because I think he is.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's a good head coach.
Fair enough. But
so this goes in the offense coordinator category.
Because Tua's not as comfortable under center. He's also a shorter quarterback, so that hurts him from under center as well. So they run all of the same actions, wide zone, boots, things like that, but they run it from the pistol with the quarterback and then the running back directly behind the quarterback. And they do a little sidecar stuff, too, with the fullback right next to the QB.
Get into that, like, sort of full house. Sort of thing.
And,
which, if you're going to have Spencer Larson, wow, that's a throwback. I don't know where that came from. When was he the fullback? Like 2006?
Yeah, I don't know. Are you talking about Brock Lampy?
Lampy, thank you. Yes. If you're going to have Brock Lampy or maybe even Jaheim Bell, and like those guys are going to play a role on the offense, like or even Lan Larison, he's not a fullback size, but he's a bigger running back and can embrace the physicality.
Yeah.
You could have a lot of fun with those pistol sort of mini full house looks.
Yes. Yeah, I'm all for the pistol, you know that. But my whole thing, and I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, and
Spencer Larson has not been on the Patriots since 2012. He hasn't played in the NFL since 2013.
Well, you got Spencer Larson on your mind. I don't know.
Apparently, I don't know where that came from. If anything, I thought I'd say a long snapper.
So
he didn't even play a game here.
What a pull! You're just in Madden mode over there, I think.
It's not even related. I don't know where that came from.
A million texts about this new Madden thing.
We'll get to that.
Madden thing. We'll get to that maybe in the second hour. But what was I going to say?
Must have been a number 46 thing.
The last thing I was going to say about the pistol.
We were talking about the full house.
So with the quarterback, and I feel like I'm in the minority when it comes to designing ways for Drake May to run. I don't think a lot of people want to do that. I get it. He got banged up a little bit last year at times. He's the franchise. People want to be careful with him. But the big reason why I continue to be in the minority on that point is that I don't think that you're going to max Drake May out unless you let him run around a little bit. I truly don't. And I don't want to turn him into Lamar Jackson.
No, so that's the thing. I'm not totally anti. Don't confuse the people who say he shouldn't run and you shouldn't have designed runs with you got to be careful about how much you run him, because those are two different things. They do need to run him designed a bit, because that's just the game now, and you have, it's a huge benefit if you have that quarterback run element in your bag. But and then you've heard me talk about this with Josh Allen all the time. Like, there's an equilibrium.
Yeah, you
don't want to run him so little that you lose that chess piece in that factor that is to keep the defense honest. But you don't want to run him so much that he's getting banged up and he's becoming less of a player, both as a runner and a passer. And it's not easy. There's no 30 carries, boom. Like, there's no exact number from game to game, season to season that defines that. I think it's really one of the harder things for an offense coordinator and a team to figure out. But the Patriots now one of these teams that's going to kind of have to find that equilibrium. And there might not be one. There honestly might not be one, but they're going to be one of the teams now with Drake May, just like the Bills have been doing for years with Josh Allen, that has to find that.
So I'm not advocating for Drake May to be them designing runs for him a ton in the open field, like between the 20s, as part of the core tenets of their offense, like a Baltimore and Lamar Jackson.
Not even read option stuff?
I would be okay with that from the gun, but I'm not saying that I want him to run the ball 100 times a year, right? Like Cam Newton did in 2020. I'm not asking for that. But the things that I think are important for him to incorporate his legs on are short yardage, high leverage situations, right? 3rd down and 2, 3rd down and 1, goal line. Those are the types of things that just having the quarterback account for somebody, or the defense have to account for the quarterback in some capacity, it's such a schematic advantage to the offense that makes it so difficult to defend you that you kind of have to do it if you have that ability as the quarterback. Like, if you don't have a mobile quarterback, then obviously you're not going to do it. If you have Kirk Cousins, you're not going to be running zone reads on the goal line. But with a guy like Drake May, you absolutely can. And the only time that he keeps is when it's a clear path to the end zone. And ideally, he's not even getting hit. Right, he's just waltzing into the end zone like he did in the preseason. I think that was week 2 of the preseason last year, where he scored that rushing touchdown and he just kind of waltzed into the end zone.
Yes, he had one in the regular season too against Houston.
Did he?
Was it against Houston? He had one last year. It was in the throwbacks.
Okay,
I remember that. I'll pull it up. But and that's just while we're on the Drake May. Another thing they can do, and maybe this isn't the setting to do it. Figure out what his. I don't even know what there probably is a technical phrase for it, but how he's going to terminate his runs. Right?
Yeah.
And ideally, if he's by the sideline, he gets the sideline.
Right.
Or if he can score, he scores. But is he going to be? Because we went through this last year. We're is sliding the best thing? Because in the action of the slide, you leave yourself exposed, even if you're giving yourself up. And it's a penalty.
Some
to
people
hit you,
think diving for head first is
right,
the way to do it.
Right, because you can tuck and cover and kind of figuring out how they want him to do that is something else that should be on the to-do list this offseason.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. The next thing I want to talk about here on the old rundown is Stefon Diggs being out at Patriots practice on Monday. Our first look at Stefon Diggs at a Patriot practice, and I got to say, I'm excited. How can you not be excited watching a receiver of that caliber in a Patriot uniform in a Patriot practice, even though it was against air? Catching passes from Drake May on routes against air is still something that we haven't seen yet. And I was really excited. I think the two things that stand out are obviously how far along he is physically. And, we don't have any inside information on truly what his timeline is or anything like that. But he, based off of what we've seen from other players, and the one that a lot of people have gone back and compared it to, because it's recent, is Kendrick Bourne's recovery from his ACL a couple of years ago. And Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL in October. Stefon Diggs tore his ACL in October.
Late October.
So it's kind of the same exact timeline. And we never saw Kendrick Bourne in a practice until he was on the field on a game. Like,
right.
In last
he was
season.
out there in a t-shirt and shorts, just kind of walking around.
Yeah, we never saw him do positional drills. We never saw him do jog throughs. Obviously, Stefon Diggs did not do team periods, but this is already further along than a lot of guys that we've seen in our experience on the beat be at this point. And again, I don't want to necessarily put timelines on it, but I can't help but feeling like his goal of being back for week 1 is not totally out of sight. Like when you look at him moving, there might be a little bit still of like his gait is like maybe a little bit of a limp, like it's not 100% yet. But he was looking really good. I mean, the routes he was running when he was actually running the route, he was looking explosive. He was looking fast. And the other thing that stood out to me is just the type of swagger and confidence that a true superstar receiver like Stefon Diggs brings to a practice and brings that kind of energy to a practice. They haven't had a guy like that in quite some time that comes on the field and is like, all right, like, the alpha is here, right? Like that sort of thing. And I know he's older. I know he's coming off the injury, but this was extremely exciting to me to watch this unfold. And the fact that they're already getting him into some of these walkthroughs tells me that they're thinking that maybe this timeline is going to be, accelerated compared to other ACL recoveries as well, because they're trying to get him in on the plays, right? They want to get him running and get him in on the plays. So what did you see from Stefon Diggs? I was super excited about what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of it. Just the way he was moving, and this was the big unknown when they signed him, was this is a guy that's, 31 years old, right? Coming off a torn ACL. You don't know if he's going to look the same, and what's the timeline look like, and he didn't do any of the competitive team stuff, right? So he did individual positional stuff. He did some of that walkthrough stuff that was offense versus defense, and that was it. Yeah. And then he was over on that side field with Jalen Polk, who's also rehabbing. But like for what he did, I don't want to say he was full go because he didn't do every drill, but when he was on the field, like it looked like he was running 100% and planting and cutting 100%. Yeah. Like in that sense, he looked good to go. Clearly, there's some other checkpoints he has to hit, which isn't surprising, given the timeline, like you mentioned. Mike Giardi reported yesterday that he's still not 100%. He hasn't been fully cleared, which is what we saw. But if he's doing that now, can he start to be involved in some of the team stuff in camp? Yeah. And if he can do that, well, now week 1's realistic because he'll be on the same page as Drake May. Because that was part of it with Kendrick Bourne, too, last year. Remember, they wanted some lead-up time. Yeah, it was game shape. It was lead-up time, that sort of stuff. It wasn't that he wasn't structurally healthy. He just wasn't all the way there. He wasn't yet. Football. Yeah. He wasn't in football shape. Yeah. So if that's something Diggs can work out in camp, now week 1's on the table. So, look, I don't know what the inside of his knee looks like. I haven't seen the x-ray. I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't know what to make of it if I did. Right. But just the way he's moving out there, you usually don't see guys that recently off an ACL moving like that. So you have to figure that he's ahead of schedule. And Kendrick Bourne last year, I think the talk, and this was externally, we don't know exactly, but it was kind of like he probably wouldn't have needed to miss all 4 games he had to miss by opening on PUP. Yeah. But he would have missed a couple. So it just made more sense. Put him on PUP and give him the ramp-up time. And that's not uncommon for guys coming off a torn ACL. But let's say realistically, like Bourne could have gone in week 2 or 3. It looks like Diggs is more than 2 or 3 weeks ahead of where Kendrick Bourne was. Yeah. So, and I don't think Bourne was slow by any means in his return. That was about what everybody was expecting. Yeah. So it was definitely encouraging just to see how well Diggs was moving. I really feel like Stefon Diggs, and assuming that everything goes well with him, in terms of his buy-in and things like that, I really feel like Stefon Diggs is going to be a huge impact player for this team based off of what we saw the other day. I know it's only one practice, but I'm also basing it off of what he looked like in Houston before he got hurt last year, what he's looked like in some of these videos that he's posted on social media of his workouts away from the facility that he's been doing. To me, but just off the eye test, like he looks like Stefon Diggs. Like he looks like a guy that is
moving with purpose, like explosive cuts in and out of breaks, changing directions on a dime, running routes like the technician that he has been in the past. And when you start to think about the ways that he can be used in a Josh McDaniel offense and how they can put him different spots in the formation, whether it's out wide or in the slot or in a bunch or in a condensed split or whatever the case may be, they can find all these different ways to get him off the line of scrimmage and into good matchups. And his whole career, and even last year in Houston, he was on pace for another 100-catch season. He was going to have 100 catches, over 1,000 yards for the Texans last year before he got hurt. If Stefon Diggs is healthy, Stefon Diggs is catching 100 balls. Like, that's the reality.
Especially in this offense. If they're going to use him the way we think they're going to use him.
So I don't see any reason to believe on, June 4th, which I get is we're a ways away from actually playing games. If he's healthy, I don't see any reason to believe that he's not going to be 100 balls like he is every other year of his career. So that's extremely encouraging.
Well, the bigger question to me, and this goes more to the structure of his knee because it's more yards after the catch. He has caught 100 passes every year going back to his first year in Buffalo.
Yeah.
1,000 yards.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what because Edelman's still the Patriots' last 1,000-yard receiver, right?
Yep. 800 would be like Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, I think eclipsed 800.
Pop had like 700 last year, right?
But, last 1,000-yard receiver is Edelman in 19, I think.
Is he also the last 100-catch? I'll look.
Yeah, I think that's definitely in play. Now, I've said it before with Diggs. I'll say it again. The one thing that I think fans should prepare for is that the Stefon Diggs towards the end in Buffalo and the Stefon Diggs in Houston before he got hurt last year was a possession receiver. This is a middle of the field, first and second level possession receiver. The days of him being like the explosive, take the top off the defense, really take chunks out of the defense type of guy. I don't know if that is still his game. Like and that's not a bad thing. It's just that he's going to be the chain mover, the engine, the possession guy in this offense when he's healthy. And they've got to find, and we can talk about some other guys in that room, like they got to find the explosive plays. Like they're going to have to find that, I think, still someplace else. Not saying that Diggs isn't going to have any explosive plays, because I'm sure he'll have some. But that's not where he was last year with Houston. It's not where he was in his last season in Buffalo. His last year in Buffalo and last year in Houston, it's 3rd and 6, we're going to find Stefon Diggs over the middle for 8 or 9 yards. Like that was his game. And that's a ton of value to have that kind of, safety net for a quarterback. Yeah. I'm not saying that there's no value in that by any means, but just that's the one thing I would prepare for with Diggs. All right. The other
is this right? Julian Edelman. So Julian Edelman's the only guy with 100 catches since I went back 10 years. 2014. He only did it once? In that span?
I could believe that because, Edelman had some injuries.
So I went back
2015, he was probably on pace for his best season, and that's when he got hurt.
Right. So I went back to
missed a year
14.
With the ACL.
So he caught 113, then 92, 61 was 15, he got hurt. He had 98 in 2016, so he was right there. 74, caught 119, and then he just caught 21 that last year. So they've only had one guy catch 100 balls in the last decade.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But so Diggs maybe
did James White never did it?
No, so James White I think peaked at 70.
Okay.
I have a James White adjacent take if you want to talk about the running backs. But I want to find the 1,000-yard receivers first.
What's your take?
Also, the last 1,000-yard receiver, Edelman in 19. Also, Cooks in 17, Gronk in 17. Man, that offense was awesome.
Yeah.
Edelman in 16, Gronk in 15, Gronk in 14.
Not to go on nostalgia and when we have stuff to talk about, but the fact that we never got to see Cooks, Gronk, and Edelman on the field together is such a bummer.
You're just going to ruin my day right now?
Well, that's
what we're doing?
It's just such a bummer. Like, that offense felt like it had, I don't say 07 potential, but like had the potential to be one of the better offenses of the entire
2011
run.
potential, maybe.
Yeah, like 07's obviously
the other MVP year for him?
2010. He won the MVP.
That's what I meant. Yeah, 2010. Yeah. That's one of my big second guesses of the Dynasty. And look, they obviously were very successful, but
they literally won the Super Bowl the next year without him.
I know. I wish they kept Cooks though. I also just always really liked him as a player. So I had a hot take at the time because do you remember why the Saints traded Cooks? because him and Michael Thomas were both upset that they weren't getting the ball enough, and they basically had to trade one to make the other happy. I said at the time they traded the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And this was right at the peak hype of Slant Boy. And Michael Thomas had just caught like 135 passes or something. People were like, you're nuts. Brandon Cooks is just fast, whatever.
Yeah.
In retrospect.
No, Brandon Cooks had a great career.
Brandon Cooks had a much better career than Michael Thomas did. Brandon Cooks was a very good player. He's still not
playing.
a bad player. Yeah, he's still not a bad player. It's not what he was, but he's still not a bad player. That's enough Brandon Cooks reminiscing. But I'm always down to do more if you guys want to call and talk Brandon Cooks. James White peaked at 87 catches in 2018, and he had 72 the next year. So my take on this is I think it's going to depend how they split the snaps, right? And obviously health. But looking at how they're using the running backs in the spring, and it's still early, but looking at how they're using the running backs in the spring, not just who's out there, but some of the formational stuff they're doing, the pairings they're doing with these guys, I think a running back finishes, and I'm not ready to say who, but I think a running back finishes top 3 on the team in catches this year. Maybe even top 2. If Diggs is fully healthy, Diggs will be 1. I think there's a real chance a running back has second most catches. And again, you look.
I definitely think there's a chance that Travion Henderson is that guy.
You look at the last couple of years of Josh. James White really kind of took over the role in 2016. 60 catches, 56, 87, 72, and then he was hurt the last 2 years, 49 and 12. But in the peak there, he's anywhere from really 60 to 70 catches, and then he got up to 87 that 1 year. So my thing with Henderson is like, how are they going to split the carries? Is he going to be on the field enough? If it truly is just Travion Henderson in the James White role, Travion Henderson is going to be top 3 in the team in catches if he stays healthy.
So there's 2 ways to look at this take. The one way is in a positive that Travion Henderson's a difference maker, and they're just trying to find ways to get him the football.
So I think there's 2 things behind this take. That's one of them.
The other one is that we just drafted this running back in the top of the second round, and we need to get him touches.
Oh, no, there's another part of the take, too.
So that's because I'm a worry wart.
Yeah.
If the one thing that I worry about with Travion Henderson, and a little bit based off of what we've seen in these practices, too, is that, like, the swing screen in the flat to Travion Henderson is just going to be spammed all season long, whether it's working or not, because they're trying to make Travion Henderson happen.
Well, but
and it brings me back a little bit to like Jonnu Smith in 2021.
So, but like they've been good about it too. Like when Damian Harris, who was not picked as high as Travion Henderson, was top 100 pick. Like when it didn't work with him right away, they sat him. Now they had other options.
I'm not worried about it not working because Henderson can't make it work. It's just,
are they just going to overdo it?
Overdoing it, and like one of the little faults of Josh, because I love McDaniels, but one of the little faults that he has at times is force feeding targets and touches on like the same screenplay like 100 times.
So
right?
Here's the thing with Henderson though. For me, like if you were just going to rank, this is potential because a lot of these guys we haven't seen him yet, but like if you were going to rank explosive playmaking ability, big play threat from their skill position players,
he's number 1 probably.
You think he's number 1? I don't think he's number 1. He's up there. Really?
In terms of a guy that has
skill position, not running back, skill position.
So the best skill on the team currently.
Yeah.
That has the best
game breaking explosive speed,
ability to tilt flip the field, right, with his speed.
Yeah.
I would say it'd probably be Travion Henderson,
I'd put Pop ahead of him, but
I mean, maybe. I mean, Travion Henderson hasn't played yet in the NFL.
So that's part of it.
If we're just going off of pure game-breaking speed and play in space, like Pop Douglas is a good player.
So you feel strong. So that was part of the other reason I gave that take is like McDaniel's the volume guy. Like he has certain guys that he just wants to feed the ball.
Yeah.
I would imagine Travion Henderson's going to be on that short list. Like they don't have
100%.
How many volume receivers do they have? Diggs can be, certainly. Yeah. Kyle Williams, maybe. I still like the pick. I'm still not entirely sure how they're going to use him.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what that's going to look like. So he could be, depending on his role, but the X isn't usually a volume role in Josh McDaniel's offense. And then Hunter Henry. Yeah. So there's not...
And Ramondre. Ramondre is going to get his fair share of touches.
Not in the pass game, though.
Maybe not in the pass game.
I'm saying like throwing the ball.
But
like,
in general, he's going to be a high volume
But
guy.
I think Henderson's probably on the short list of guys that McDaniels is going to want a volume role.
Yeah, it's probably maybe closer than from between him and Pop than I made it sound. But if I had to say who's the most dangerous player on the field on their roster right now, I think it's probably Travion Henderson already.
I mean, the big play guys to me, and this is not knowing where Diggs is at after the knee, and you said before he's kind of this more possession receiver now.
Yeah.
It's in whatever order, Travion Henderson, Pop Douglas, Kyle Williams. And two of those are on potential because they're rookies, but like those are your big play threats. Hunter Henry, really good player.
Third and
more
four,
of a chain mover, right?
Hunter Henry's
chain
gonna
mover.
get you the first
I
down.
still think Ramondre Stevenson's a good player. Chain mover, and maybe not as much in the pass game. Mac Hollins, chain mover. Diggs at this point, really good chain mover. Those are your big play guys.
Okay, so moving on to the next item here I had on my list, Jelani Tavai going down with an injury during practice. Was always, those things are always a tough scene. You know, players were huddled around him on a knee and things like that, and it looked worse than, luckily, at least what the reporting is. I think Ian Rappaport was first on it yesterday, saying that it's an injury that's significant enough to knock him out of minicamp or the rest of the spring, but that's really just minicamp at this point. But it's not.
Well, it's also.
It said the report said that he should be back by.
Well, said he's out until training camp.
Yeah.
So that means like maybe some individual stuff he was going to do in the offseason he won't be able to do. He might be, is he a guy that opens on PUP because he's off on that side field and has to get back into football shape for the first week or whatever?
Yeah, so based off the reporting, it's a calf injury for Jelani Tavai, and when I heard that report, it made sense to me why the reaction was the reaction, because that could be Achilles, right? And so when everybody was looking, worried and concerned about Jelani Tavai, we didn't really know what it was. It looked like a leg injury, but we were just looking from across the practice field and really had no idea. So when the calf injury came out, then the Achilles would make sense as what people were worried about around him. His teammates were worried about that it was. And those calf injuries, as we've all become experts, I'm sure, on Achilles tendon tears for other reasons in this region, the calf is obviously sometimes a prerequisite to blowing an Achilles, so you have to be careful that you don't come back too early.
That's what happened with Durant.
It happened with Kevin Durant, that he came back too early, came back for the NBA Finals. What are you doing over there?
I didn't do anything.
Came back for the NBA Finals and ruptured his Achilles after trying to play on a calf injury. So I'm not, I don't know about Jelani Tavai's situation. Just put it on the ground.
I just want to make sure. Is my mic still on? Is that still working?
Yeah.
I think the tape gave out.
You're breaking stuff.
I just fell. It was taped on. I didn't touch it.
But I think the bigger thing with Jelani Tavai is not necessarily his timeline in return from injury, because we're still a ways away from playing any games. Yeah, help him out over there. He's just comes into our studio, starts breaking things.
I didn't do anything. It fell.
And the biggest thing,
I'm making sure to not break things. I was swinging the mic earlier to get more or less tension on the cord.
I think there's two things that come from the Tavai thing. One, I don't necessarily think that his job security is 100% safe on this team. Like, I think Jelani Tavai is a perfectly good football player, but I'm still trying to figure out his role in this defense and where exactly he fits within the scheme that they're trying to run currently. And then the second thing is Jelani Tavai has played a lot of snaps for this team over the last couple of years. If he is not there, how do we feel about their other options? Obviously, Spillane is going to be a big part of that linebacker mix, but how do we feel about it being Christian Ellis and Jack Gibbons and maybe my guy Marte Mapu?
So I wanted to get to this.
Like,
finally, 3 years later, you're seeing Marte Mapu play some linebacker. How do you feel?
Well, a coaching staff that's willing to actually pay fast guys and athletic guys at linebacker are seeing that.
Right, it's more of a stylistic fit.
Yeah, he can fit there. But we've had a lot of questions about this, I feel like, on our shows about linebacker depth and people not being crazy about their options at linebacker. And if this coaching staff does have a vision of how to use Tavai, if Tavai is now not in the mix, that really should bring those questions up even more, I would think. So first part of the question, we'll start there. How do you view Jelani Tavai right now in the scope of this roster?
Yeah, he's right there on the bubble.
Yeah.
And I think there's a role for him. And we talked about this the other week, a guy that comes in, goal line, short yardage, and still gives you that thumping downhill, big physical linebacker that you're probably not going to have on the field nearly as much as they used to, but 25-30% of the time is a guy you might want to have in your back pocket. And then he'll play on special teams as well, right, to justify the roster spot. So that could be a role. is that a role that they maybe feel like they have to have, or maybe you sign somebody to the practice squad that you can elevate for certain games? Like, I don't think Tavai has to be that guy. I don't think he's unique in playing that role. So I think he's on the bubble. And if he's going to miss time in camp, that obviously doesn't help. I don't think it's something he can't overcome. If he's just going to miss the first week, especially with that role, be back when the pads are on, right? We don't need to see in coverage. So, but I think he's right there on the bubble. He's one of these kind of situational guys that this is what the at-large roster spots come down to. Would they rather have that guy versus maybe it's keeping him to stop the run versus, okay, well, we want to keep a third tight end and a fullback. Yeah. We want to keep C.J. Dupree and Brock Lampy, not Spencer Larson, Brock Lampy, right? Maybe it's, keeping that sixth wide receiver is the difference there. Maybe it's a third quarterback. We go on, fourth running back, right? So I think that's probably where he's competing. He's going to be in for one of those at-large spots.
So my view on it with Tavai in terms of his fit in the defense, there is definitely sound reasoning to think if they put Robert Spillane, and now it's different defenses, but just, stay with me. If they put Robert Spillane in like a Jawan Bentley type role where he's truly the Mike and he's truly like the tackle, guy that's playing at the point of attack and is reading out runs.
You're trying to funnel everything to him.
Then you put Tavai back into that hybrid fixer role, I think is what they used to call it in the old defense. Like if you put him back in that like weak side hybrid role, that's what he played at a really high level at a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So I could see the vision of, well, if Spillane is going to really be the Simon Sound, funneling the ball to him in the run game, he's going to plug the A gaps. Like that's Spillane's role in the defense. Then Tavai's back to kind of roaming like he was in 23 and here with the Patriots. Then yeah, maybe you could go back to seeing the good version of Jelani Tavai. Last year, when he was trying to play the Jawan Bentley role, he was overmatched. But maybe if you go back to that role a couple years ago, you could see it. But when I watch these practices, him and Anthony Jennings just stand out to me as guys without a home right now. I just don't really feel they want to get smaller. They want to get faster at linebacker. If you're going to play weak side linebacker in a defense like that, like this, there's two things that you have to really be able to do. One thing is you got to be able to chase the ball, right? Because you're going to be doing a lot of fitting and then spilling, right? So you're going to have the guys at the point of attack are going to try to get the ball to bounce outside the numbers. So you need to have somebody that can go across the field and make that tackle when the ball bounces. Is that really Jelani Tavai's game? I don't know. Maybe he can lose some weight and get down to a faster, more sleek version of himself to be that way. And the other thing is when you roll into zone coverage, the weak side linebacker has a lot of really high stress zone assignments, especially in cover 3 defenses when he's playing like the weak hook, where like you might have to pick up a crossing route or something like that from the opposite side. So there's a lot of athleticism that it usually takes to play that kind of role in a true even front mechanic type defense. So like, we'll see if that's Tavai. Like it definitely feels like it's a little bit more Christian Ellis, Jack Gibbons, one of those types of guys. Maybe Marte Mapu finally clicks for him, and it's sort of his type of role. Maybe it's Duggar in the box, right? And he's the one that's really playing that kind of weak side role. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes in terms of his fit, because Jennings, stand-up edge setter. This is a 4-down defense. Like that's not really a role anymore in this defense. Tavai is, that big hybrid linebacker. That's not really a role too much in this defense either. So whenever we watch these practices, those two guys just look to me like solid football players, guys that can contribute and certainly can deserve to be on teams. But where do they fit on this football team? I'm still not entirely sure. How do we feel about their depth behind Tavai, behind Spillane? This is, again, a question that we get all the time, asking questions about that linebacker position.
I wouldn't sleep on Jack Gibbons. I don't think he's Spillane, but he's somebody that people in Tennessee were high on, kind of surprised that he was let go. And I think he's, in the opportunities he's gotten, he's looked good. And Marte Mapu in the picture as well. It's not their deepest position. I don't know that it's a spot that I'm super worried about. Because, again, Tavai wasn't, like if Spillane goes down, right? And if you or Gibbons, right, you're trying to plug somebody into that role. That's not a role you're plugging Tavai into.
Not ideally,
because he plays the game completely differently. So Could they use another linebacker? Maybe. Like, I wouldn't be against that, and that might be a guy you can just get on waivers or something.
Yeah.
Down the road. But I don't know that I felt any better or worse. Like, depending on Tavai, he's in a different category to me.
Yeah, I the way I feel is not any worse really about it either, because I don't think that they're going to play a lot more than 2 linebackers at a time.
No.
And then when I say linebackers, I mean like true off-ball linebackers.
Yeah.
Like their base defense will have 2 off-ball linebackers, but I don't envision them playing very many linebackers to begin with. On third down, I don't know if they're going to be playing any of those guys.
Well,
frankly. And I mean, I'm sure situationally third and short.
So
and things like
that's where I think. Well, no, I was going to say third and long. Like Christian Ellis, we saw last year, he can be a factor in coverage.
Right, but is Christian Ellis going to play, or are they going to do are they going to add another pass rusher onto the field instead of a pure pass rusher?
Well, the other thing I was going to say is they can, they have safeties that can do some linebacker type stuff in Peppers and Duggars. Right. They can get creative with it.
I just wonder if nowadays when you look at third down defense, and we're talking about like third and medium to long, third and 5+. A lot of defenses play like 5 rushers and then 6 defensive backs, and there's like really no middle. There's no middle layer to that. If they run the football, then the safeties are just coming from depth and filling like their linebackers. They really have done away with the mid-range there. Of a defense, right? Like that doesn't really exist anymore. It's 5 guys up top, across the line of scrimmage to rush the quarterback, and then it's the 6 guys in the back end. And so at that point, I don't even know if Spillane is going to necessarily be on the field a ton on like 3rd and 8, right? Like I don't know if that's necessarily going to be where he plays. So I in my mind, I'm saying they need like 3 linebackers. They need 3 linebackers for the season that they feel comfortable playing at a high volume, because someone will get hurt.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast.
Well, is that Spillane, Gibbons, and Ellis?
It could be. It could be. I think there's a really good possibility that it is, or maybe it ends up being Spillane, Tavai, and Ellis, and then Gibbons is kind of like the 4th guy that's an ace special teamer / depth piece.
See, that's more what I think Tavai is.
Yeah.
Because if you want, again, he's not a 1-for-1 swap with Spillane or even Ellis, where Gibbons is.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, a couple more items on OTAs here, and then we'll open up the phone lines. 855-PATS-500 is the phone number if you want to jump in. We have a bunch of emails coming in, too, that we'll get to here starting in a second. But I got to ask you, Alex, June 4th, are we...
Kickers?
No, not yet.
All right.
Are we buying or selling our Effton Chisum stock right now? Are you buying this Effton Chisum hype?
So I don't think I'm as hyped as most people. Here's where I'm at with Effton Chisum, and this is very much not a we have a show to do today take.
Yeah.
But we talked about this last week.
You're gonna sit on the fence.
We've been
like
burned before, right? It's not sitting on the fence. It's not quite sitting on the fence.
Okay.
I don't think as a UDFA or as anybody really, you can win a roster spot in June. I just don't think you can do it. Football's played in pads or not in pads. That being said, me and you have seen what it takes for UDFA, even at that position, to make a roster push and make the team. We saw Jacoby Myers obviously do it. Even other guys who made the team and maybe didn't have as much of an impact, a guy like Christian Wilkerson, right? We've seen what it takes. And Effton Chisum right now is laying as good of a foundation as he could possibly lay to go into camp with the stage set for him to win a roster spot. The 2 things that stand out to me about Effton Chisum. Number 1, really good hands catcher.
Yeah.
And as much as the Patriots have struggled assimilating wide receivers into Josh McDaniels' offense historically, not just in the draft, free agents, right? There's not, in the ones that have hit, there's not necessarily a ton of carryover between them. It's not all one similar guy. But one thing they all have in common, from Deion Branch to Wes Welker to Julian Edelman to even Rob Gronkowski, they're all really good hands catchers. What that means is you can go outside your frame and get the football. You don't need to bring it in. You don't need to cradle it off your body. It's just 2 hands like, remember those old NFL fantasy football commercials? Where I think it's Chris Cooley like punching through the wall to catch the football, right? Like that's what you think of when you think of hands catching. I once heard a coach say, like, catching the football is not a passive activity. It is an active activity. You attack the football, you go out, you go get the football. And part of this, too, there's another layer to this, and this was a big Randy Moss thing and Rob Gronkowski thing, not to put Chisum in the same category as those guys, but they
I
were
heard
great
that
as
you just
it.
called him Randy Moss. That's what I heard.
Late hands, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, as soon as the ball is thrown, go like this because the cornerback's covering you, especially in man where he's not looking at the quarterback. All right, hands are up, ball's coming. You watch some like prime Randy Moss, the last second it's just boop.
Yeah.
Just real quick with the hands, put the ball out. And he's been doing that. So one, strong hands catcher, which generally works with Josh McDaniels. Two, it's been unbelievable at the top of the route. His ability to set up, stack the defender, break off in open space. It's consistent. It's clean every single time. So I love that he's doing all that. I got to see it in pads. Because what happens when the corner, and I know illegal contact, blah, 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 but there's always a little pushing and shoving, right, at the top of the route. What happens when the corner can get his hands on him at the top of the route? What happens when he's getting off the line of scrimmage? What about how good are his hands through contact, right? So I've seen people be like, is Effton Chisum in roster lock territory yet? No, he's not. You can't be. No UDFA can be at this point of the year. It's just not realistic. But he's doing everything he needs to do at this point that when we get to August and the pads come on, like, we're not just going to be learning about Effton Chisum come August.
Set the table.
He's set the stage. He's built the foundation.
So we always talk about Maurice Harris as the number one poster child for this. I'm going to give Maurice Harris a break here today and talk about somebody else.
Well, it's a little different because Maurice Harris was more straight line speed.
And he was also more of a veteran player. But the guy that I wanted to bring up today was actually, do you remember, I want to say it was 22. Trey Nixon had a really nice spring.
Yes.
Trey Nixon had a really nice spring. Trey Nixon was a 7th round pick by the Patriots. I don't believe so. I think he retired, actually.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
He's a 7th round pick by the Patriots. He was Ernie Adams' pick. It was Ernie's last draft. He drafted Trey Nixon. Bill gave him the pick. And
first person to wear 87 after Rob Gronkowski,
yeah, drafted Trey Nixon. And Trey Nixon was a speedy, shifty receiver, inside receiver mostly. And he had that skill set, and for the spring portion, he was lighting it up with Mac Jones. Like, him and Mac Jones had a rapport. It looked like that was going places. And then, to your point, the pads came on in August, and we never heard of Trey Nixon again. It just completely dropped off. He also battled injuries throughout his career, nagging things that just kept on derailing his development. And to that end, we've just built up scar tissue over time here with these types of examples with our time on the beat of knowing when you just can't overreact to guys this time of year. But I would say you especially can't overreact to guys this time of year that are really nifty route runners, like guys that really know how to separate, because you can't get your hands on people. You can't be physical. There's no threat of the safety coming down and clocking you. Not that they do that in practice necessarily anyways, but there's just not a whole lot of resistance and physicality to the game right now. So we have to see it when the pads come on. That being said, the one thing I am buying with Effton Chisum that makes me think that he has a clear path to making this roster is that he just fits the mold. Like, he fits the suit of what Josh McDaniels looks for in that slot position. And you mentioned the hands catching and attacking the football. That's a big part of it. Another big part of it is, finding those pockets of space and being able to navigate high traffic areas over the middle of the field and just knowing when to settle, knowing when to sit against zone, knowing how to break off option routes. And when you start talking about the slot position and McDaniels' offense over the years, one of the things that always is important too is that it's a very high IQ position, because you have a lot of options to your routes. Every route you run is going to have conversions or options where if it's zone, you're doing this. If it's man, you're breaking away. If it's zone, you're sitting here. If it's too high zone, you're sitting there. If it's one high zone, you're sitting here. Like, there's all sorts of different intricacies to playing that specific position. We all know probably about the Juke series with Haas Juke and all that kind of stuff, where it's different breaks and different sort of things based off the coverage. It's not a coincidence that Julian Edelman, former quarterback, Jacoby Myers, former quarterback, like the guys that we've seen recently succeed at a high level in that role have all had backgrounds as former quarterbacks. Now, Effton Chisum doesn't have that, but when I watch Effton Chisum play in here so far in the spring, he has that high IQ or that innate ability to just find those areas of the field. So I'm not so much over the top about Effton Chisum individually in a vacuum, but I am seeing, okay, this is a Josh McDaniels slot receiver. And we talked about in the draft, whether it was like Xavier Restrepo or any of those types of guys, this was just kind of like small school Xavier Restrepo.
Right, Jalen Noel.
Yeah, like that's what they kind of did here with Chisum. And that archetype has a role on this team.
So, it's not to say, we're kind of coming in here and really talking down on the kid. It's not to say we don't think he can do it. Like, I still haven't put together, like, I'll do a roster projection after minicamp next week. I'm probably going to have him on.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's on pace to do it. And the things we've seen him do, he's done well. Again, finding space, creating separation at the top of the route, catching the football. But that's not, there are more things he's going to need to prove he can do in order to make the team. It's not that he's failed at them. They just haven't come up yet, because that's how this process works. So he's just got to check a couple more boxes that he hasn't even gotten to, and he's on track to make the team. But to say he's, a roster lock right now or trending in that direction,
Agreed.
It's just entirely too early.
So if you're, I know it's stereotypical to talk about Effton Chisum in this way, but there's a reason why every single time a Riley McCarron or an Austin Carr or any Braxton Berrios, when those guys came through here in the Dynasty years, in the Brady years, there's a reason why everybody latched onto those guys. Is there's a possibility this player can make the roster, and I say that I feel the same way about Chisum. Like, I think that Chisum just has that mold and has that skill set that just fits the role. And Drake May in college, and a lot of people have brought this up with Pop Douglas, and I think it is relevant with Pop as well. His most productive receiver in college was Josh Downs.
Yeah.
And that's a smaller, shifty slot receiver.
I still think, and I talked about this yesterday when I was on with Felger and Maz, like, people need to stop putting Pop Douglas and Effton Chisum together as if it's one or the other, because it's not. They play differently.
They're different types of players.
And Felger's take yesterday was Chisum on, Pop off, to which I'd say if Pop's not making the team, and we sort of talked about this before with the running backs, they can't afford to give up on that speed.
Yeah.
Not for a guy with the ability that he has. It's already not a fast room. And if you move on from Pop Douglas, so I look at it like Chisum is more in that Edelman, Jacoby Myers mold. He's built more like Edelman. I think his skill set is probably closer to Myers.
Yeah.
But he's just not as big. Pop Douglas, to me, I'll keep going back to this, is Danny Amendola. Pop Douglas is built like a slot receiver, but he plays more vertically, and he has more of that straight line speed that allows you to keep a defense honest vertically rather than a guy like Edelman or Myers who stretches you horizontally. They can both be on the roster. Frankly, they can both be on the field at the same time. Not all the time, because you can't be that small all the time. But there is absolutely room for both of them. I don't think it's one or the other. I don't really think they're comparable players. If they had drafted Jalen Noel, he's more comparable to Pop Douglas to me, because he has more of that game-breaking speed. He's faster. He's more of a vertical player. I don't think Chisum and Pop, there's some similarities, not entirely different. But I think to say, they have these receivers, guys like Pop Douglas and Effton Chisum, those are two different players. That's like saying, they have a bunch of running backs, guys like Sony Michel and James White. Both good players. Sony Michel and James White are not the same, like, they don't do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's some overlap between Pop and Chisum, but I don't think it's nearly as much as people are making it.
I agree, and I don't know about Amendola. Like, when I watch Pop, though, I don't know if he's ever going to get to the volume that Deion Branch got to.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the type of
I thought Kyle Williams
movement
was the Deion Branch comp.
I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like Kyle Williams is more, what I am starting to see with him is more Brandon Cooks than Deion Branch. But like that's the way that I just look at Pop, just because of the quick twitch ability. Like Deion Branch was also very quick and has that, like, those explosive shifty movements, and that Pop Douglas has. Pop Douglas also, I think to your point about them being different, Pop Douglas can be a scheme touch guy. Like, Pop Douglas can be a screen merchant. He can be a jet sweep guy. You can get him the ball near the line of scrimmage in some space, and he can run with the football. That's not Effton Chisum's game. Effton Chisum does not have juice like that after the catch. He's going to get caught from behind. He's not going to stretch the field horizontally on a jet sweep or something like that. Effton Chisum is going to be that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type of slot receiver that's just going to, eat up middle of the field coverage, right? Like that's going to be
Right.
Effton Chisum if he succeeds, if he pans out. So they are different in that sense. Pop Douglas is much more explosive than Effton Chisum is. The difference to me, though, with Pop compared to Effton Chisum is that I think Effton Chisum has a little bit more of a feel and instinct
He's a better route runner.
of the game. Yeah, better
He's
route runner.
Not just the physical technique, but the mental side.
Yeah,
of it.
like Pop Douglas is a great man-to-man beater because he just
quick runs away
as
from
hell.
people, yeah.
Right, and it's just hard to cover him in a phone booth. But he's not necessarily the best at like feeling out coverage and understanding where to sit and understanding where the voids are and finding the space. If he developed that, then I think Pop Douglas could be like an 1,000-yard receiver in this offense. I don't know if he's ever going to develop that now that we're going into year 3. I don't know if that exists in his. Like,
we'll see how they use him. We'll see how they work with him. But again, I don't think him and like the guy Chisum is really competing with, for me, is Jalen Polk. Like that's the similar. And again,
Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, those types of guys.
No, but I think Polk especially because again, that's that Polk got all the comps to Myers, right? That's the guy that isn't necessarily fast, but is going to get open at the sticks. And then again, what Polk was supposed to be, not what he was last year, but we talked about him in the draft. He's going to get open at the sticks. He's going to find space in the defense. He's going to sit down in zones, things like that. That's the guy that plays more like Chisum, in theory, is Polk. That really, to me, is the big competition. Those two guys are more redundant than Chisum and Pop. Chisum and Pop are just, they have similar builds.
Yeah, the word that I've heard Josh McDaniels use in the past is like he brings energy, like he puts energy into the offense. Pop Douglas puts energy in the like that's what he does. Now, Effton Chisum, I'm not sure if that he's going to do that, right? But he's also, I think he's going to have a little bit more of feel for the for coverage and for the game in general. All right, moving on now to another thing that's just really on my radar with his team, and then I'll give you a second to talk about the kickers before we wrap this up. But this is, and I know we've been pretty offense heavy, but this wasn't really
it's just this time of year.
It wasn't a big defense practice, to be honest with you. But the one thing that's really squarely on the radar for me right now is what's going on at left guard. I really feel like they're searching for a left guard. I'm not saying there isn't a guy on the roster that necessarily. I'm not saying that they're in trouble with that spot yet, but you have a guy like Wes Schweitzer, who we've talked about in the past, kind of like a Michael Jordan from last year, right? Where it's a veteran guy. He started some games in the league, but he's not necessarily. You don't necessarily feel awesome if he's the starter. Let's just put it to you that way. You don't necessarily feel awesome. Then you have some younger guys that either haven't lived up to it, like Cole Strange, and he was asked point blank the other day, frankly, you just haven't lived up to being a first-round pick, and he kind of knows it, right? He didn't shy away from it. And then you have, City So, Layden Robinson, who we haven't really seen as much of getting those opportunities with the top group. I knew Tyrese Robinson did last week when we were out there, but whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason is, but it doesn't feel like Layden Robinson is necessarily catching on just based off the reps and what we're seeing out at practice. It doesn't seem like he's really in that mix yet for that spot. If it's Schweitzer, I don't feel great about that in terms of just overall getting your best 5 out there and top end talent type of thing. But maybe he could just kind of be at least a steady presence there.
Michael Jordan, we did this a couple weeks ago.
But he's got to be better than Michael Jordan.
I know he did, but
like, can he beat Teddy Karras?
The guy that started 10 games in the last 3 years.
So no. The answer is no.
But I'm not saying it's right. But didn't we have this debate like a couple weeks ago
about him being Michael Jordan?
Could be in it, and don't rule him out. I think it's wide open. I think they're going to let it be settled when the pads come on. I think that's what it's going to come down to. And this goes back to us not seeing all the practices, right? We've seen Wes Schweitzer. We've seen Cole Strange. We've seen, I think, did City still have a left guard day, or was he at right?
I saw him. I don't think so.
We saw somebody else. We saw
Tyrese
Robinson. That's who it was. Who wasn't there the other day. But, there's probably a Layden Robinson day behind closed doors. Does Cole Strange have a day behind closed doors? City So have a day behind closed doors? Who knows? We'll see a little bit next week because we'll be out there all 3 days. But, I think it's going to be when the pads come on, it's wide open. Somebody will have to get the first snap just because somebody's got to go.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll be Schweitzer just based on what we've seen. But, lightly penciling that in. I don't think. I think they're far from decided.
It's something that's worth talking about. We talked about on this show, I know for a fact, signing a veteran left guard that was maybe a little bit more proven and a little bit more stable than Wes Schweitzer in free agency, or possibly drafting somebody high to play left guard. We talked ad nauseum about guys like Wyatt Milam and stuff like that.
I mean, it sounds like they might have thought about it. The reports that like if
70,
he had fallen to 38.
So those types of guys. We still haven't seen Jared Wilson participate in full yet. So maybe Jared Wilson eventually gets in, and I think that's the reason why I keep going back to Jared Wilson potentially playing some guard as a rookie, is because I just don't feel great about that spot right now. And if he's the best for it, then by all means let him play. The big concern is not just that it's a potential weak link. It's also the guy that's going to be playing next to Will Campbell. So Will Campbell is going to be a rookie, and he's going to be out there. And if you don't feel great about who's at left guard, that's a weaker side of the line in pass protection, especially that potentially that's a concern. Garrett Bradbury, I'm not sure what Garrett Bradbury has left yet. Is he going to be a high-end center like he was a couple years ago, or is he going to be the guy he was last year in Minnesota, which is a guy that was on the outside looking in for the Vikings? They signed Ryan Kelly to move on from Garrett Bradbury. So I wish I could sit here and say, and look, I'm not trying to be alarmist. It's June 4th. We still haven't seen any of these guys in pads. So there's a long, long way to go here. But I still feel like the offensive line, the only part of the offensive line I feel 100% good about is the right side. Like Onwenu and Morgan Moses, I think are going to be a good right side. The rest of it, I think is still up in the air.
I mean, you have to feel kind of good about Will Campbell. He's an unknown because he's a rookie.
I feel
but
good
it's
about
different.
Will Campbell and his future.
Yeah.
Will Campbell as a
saying.
rookie is going to have some bumps.
No, I get what you're saying.
No doubt.
Well, and then it's if Jared Wilson wins the starting job, left guards between two rookies.
Right.
So,
and then Bradbury I think is fine, but it's not. He's not a high-end center.
It's a pressing thing, and it's not one of these they've had the last few years. Some of these, and it's not unique to them, just the way these practices work. But the last few years, they've had some of these offensive line battles continue into the season.
Yeah.
Continue into September. You really don't want to be doing that next to a rookie with a second-year quarterback.
Yeah.
You really don't. You didn't want to be doing it with a rookie quarterback last year, by the way. Let me be clear. They screwed it up last year, too. I shouldn't say, too. They haven't screwed it up yet this year. I won't punish them for something they haven't done. But that's something you got to know when you cut down the rosters, who your starting left guard is.
Yeah, it's definitely on my mind. Okay, here's your kicker minute. It was another good day for Andy Borgalis, correct?
Yeah, he's rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's rolling. He looks good.
That's it.
I think they're going to keep Parker Romo.
Love it.
Because I think, one, they want to keep the pressure on Borgalis through camp. Two, I think they're going to want to keep him on the practice squad as a backup, just in case. More so injury than anything else. But Borgalis is looking like a guy who was drafted, which is good.
So they haven't always had that.
No.
The last couple draft picks have not gone well. I won't bring up the first one a couple
He
years
didn't even
ago.
make the team, did he, right?
No. And then Chad Ryland, of course, a couple years ago.
Chad Ryland had a good start.
Yeah.
He looked good in camp, and then he fell off. Because he beat out Nick Folk.
It's not. My point is, it's not a guarantee that it goes well.
Right, and it's not a guarantee it goes well from this. Kicking's so fickle; it's not a guarantee at any point. But so far, so good for Andy Borgalis. Not worried about anything yet.
Love it. All right. Before we open it up, I promise we will here in a second. I just want to talk a little bit about David Andrews' retirement ceremony. Awesome ceremony on Monday afternoon after the open OTA that we've just talked about, and a couple of things. First of all, I think that one of the coolest things that we do is those video montages of all the former teammates that come in and give a message to David Andrews on his retirement, from Brady, Gronk, Edelman, his offensive line. It hit me in the feels a little bit, just a nostalgia Patriots fan.
Well, there are some deep pulls in there too.
Yeah, we can get to those and explain them a little bit.
Okay.
Nate Solder, Joe Thuney, Shaq Mason, and I don't think Seabass got in there. Marcus Cannon got in there.
Marcus Cannon was in there.
So, that was the line, right? When they were rolling and they were winning Super Bowls in Andrews' career, and 16 and 18, that was mostly the group.
And really, it's because Cannon. No offense, Marcus Cannon. He came in earlier.
Yeah, I don't know if did him and Seabass overlap. Now I'm thinking about it. I don't think they did.
Maybe
I think
not.
Sebastian retired before David Andrews. David Andrews was 2015.
Right.
So-
Vollmer was they overlapped for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But it was that interior of Shaq Mason, Joe Tooney, David Andrews. They all came in within like a year of each other, and it was they all kind of went right into starting roles, and like that 3-man interior
Was rock
was
solid.
one of the best in football while they were together.
100%. One
Yeah.
of the best in football. And all three brought different things. You know,
Yeah.
Tooney was just a technician and a great athlete and just a high-level player at left guard that could do a bunch of different things. Shaq was a bulldozer. Like, he was,
Yeah.
pulled Shaq Mason through the hole, was a staple play for them. And he was an absolutely elite run blocker in his prime. David Andrews was a snarl. He was the attitude.
Yeah.
He was the tone setter. They all brought it. I was going to say Drake May. Tom Brady's shelf was kept clean for 4 or 5 years in a
Yeah.
row there with that group. Like, it felt like up the middle was never an issue. Even with Aaron Donald in the Super Bowl, they're just, keeping him at bay with those.
Is
three.
that Dante Scarnecchia's masterpiece?
It probably,
Yeah.
yeah. It just was in general
Good to
that
see
group
Scar,
was awesome.
Scar there, by the way.
Yeah, 'cause Scar was there, which was very cool. Not in the red jacket though, which I would just walk around with that thing on. If I
Yeah, he
was
doesn't
him.
seem like that kind of guy.
No, that's what I would do. But yeah, like I mentioned, a bunch of different players in that video. James White was in it. Duron Harmon, both McCourties were in
Yeah.
it. Some of the deep cuts. So Jared Stidham was
Yeah.
in it. David Andrews and Jared Stidham are tight.
Yeah.
Really tight. Their wives were really close as well when Jared Stidham was here. So that one is explained by relationships. You know,
Yeah.
that's a good friend of David Andrews's. AJ Derby, similar thing.
Great Paul.
Yeah.
AJ Derby.
Yeah, so I think that some people were sitting there and like, how did AJ Derby and Jared Stidham get in this video? Those are really good personal friends of David Andrews.
Yeah.
So
and
how
he
they
said
got
he
in.
lived with AJ Derby. I think their rookie year.
Yeah.
They were that same class. Real quick, AJ Derby minute.
Yeah.
So he was here the year that Brady was suspended, Jimmy got hurt in that second game, right? And then Jacoby tears his thumb,
Yeah.
and they have to go into that game, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe it was a different game. They were going into some game where they were super thin on quarterbacks. AJ Derby was a college quarterback. Yeah, he was here for that. It was 2016.
Yeah.
I was so convinced we were going to see AJ Derby play quarterback for the Patriots.
Oh, man.
Even if it was just like a wrinkle trick play, something Josh drew up. Because again, their quarterback, they had one quarterback on the roster. His throwing thumb didn't work. He was a rookie 4th-round pick. Like, you got to put a wrinkle in. I really thought we were going to see AJ Derby play snap for the Patriots.
Yeah.
He hung around the league for a little bit. I didn't realize he hung around as long as he did. Good for him.
Yeah, cool moment always with that. I just love, not to get all weird, but I love watching the player watching it. Like David Andrews, like watching it and just like huge smile on his face the entire time. And that was awesome. I'm sure it feels great to hear that from all of your teammates. And then David Andrews, just raw emotion from the jump in his speech. The second he got up to the podium and started trying to read the speech, he was starting to break down already. And you just could see, and we knew this just being, fans following his career from the outside, us being a little bit on the inside and being able to talk to David Andrews over the last handful of years. Football is everything to that guy. He's invested in the sport. And you could tell by the speech and just a lot of great speech, words in his speech about, the sacrifices of not only his family, but also just, what the game of football meant to him.
I loved that he thanked the game of football.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
And, he opened up talking about he wanted to express gratitude. And I think gratitude and reverence
Yeah.
for the game itself. And and this comes from me. Like, I wish I loved football half as much as David Andrews does.
Yeah.
Like, that football guy through and through, it was awesome. It was awesome just to see. And it was great for him to get to thank so many people, that his whole family was there. I think his parents were there, right?
Yep.
His wife's kids. Just thanking the sport itself, I thought was so cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And his sons were there, 2 young sons. And I think David Andrews would be a great coach if he wanted to get into
Yeah.
coaching. He could definitely coach an offensive line room someday if he wanted to do that. Now, his son, Ford and Worth, are both like 3 under 3. The worth is a baby.
Yeah.
So I can totally understand if he wants to live life with them for a little while and not.
He said that.
Yeah,
he said he wasn't looking to get into coaching.
Yeah,
right
because
away, so.
coaching is a 80, 90 hour a week, maybe more during the season type of job, and that takes you away from your family even more than playing does in a lot of ways. So I don't know if that's necessarily on in his future because of that, but I would venture to say that just based off of what he said the other day and also what he said in the past when it's been kind of clear that retirement might be in the thought process towards the end of some of these recent seasons, he loves the game too much not be around it.
He's going to be around the game somehow. He's doing the podcast with Hoyer, so he'll still be around media-wise. But
David
if he
Andrews
pivots to coaching
having
at some point, it wouldn't surprise me.
A local media presence, not too different from our friend Zolak or something like that, is not out of the question, I don't think, for him.
I don't think so.
Him being around in that
He was
capacity.
good. So he, right after it was like 2 weeks, I think, after he was cut, he did an hour with Zolak and Bertrand. He was good. He was good. So.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for him, and that's obviously way less time consuming than coaching. So, he could definitely do something like that. But a really cool moment. It's one of the players and that we actually got to spend a lot of time covering. Some of these guys we weren't around for as long, but David Andrews started in 15. I started in 18. You 17, 18.
Him and Cardona, we started in 18.
Yeah.
Him and Cardona were the last two guys that we didn't cover.
Yeah.
Right? Like I watched David Andrews the last game I tangentially covered the team when CLNS was starting up in 2017. I would, write about the games and did podcasts and stuff, but I was doing it from home. It was a side thing. I wasn't credentialed. I wasn't down here, whatever. The last game I watched, not covering the game, was 28-3.
Yeah.
So the only two guys in that game, or the last two guys in that game that were still here were Andrews and Cardona. So we've now seen, since we've been, down here every day, we've now seen the entire locker room turn over.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel old. Well, I don't love that. I'm like, because I was 24, you were 25 our first year. So guys are getting drafted and we're they're the same age as us. There's some relatability, and we're older than 70-80% of the roster now, at least. Especially now they're getting so much younger here these last couple of years.
Yeah, so
and we're still getting older for some reason.
I would put David Andrews on a personal, in terms of guys that I just enjoyed covering the most, not necessarily my Mount Rushmore of best players, but the guys that I really liked covering the most. I would put David Andrews on my personal Mount Rushmore up there with Devin McCourty, with Matthew Slater. I think those, I know Mount Rushmore's 4, but I think that those 3 kind of stand alone for me as just perfect Patriots. Just perfect on and off the field.
I'll throw in there too, and this was one of the first guys we ever talked to. Was Dante Hightower.
Yeah, he was great too.
Do you remember? So he had that corner locker right all the way in the back. Dante Hightower,
the sheriff of the locker room locker.
Big imposing guy, and you wanted to ask him something. This is when I had the camera, and we go back, and he definitely knew how much we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah,
he was like, you get one question or something like that. He's like, you can talk to me once a week or something. It was funny. He was always really good to us. It was just kind of funny.
That's a good pull. Yeah,
giving us a little rookie moment.
He would do that, and he was kidding, but he was also not kidding.
But we didn't know because we never.
So he would tell me that I could ask him one question once a week,
and it had to be good. It has to be good,
and I
wouldn't answer.
I remember one time I tried to ask him another question a couple days later, and he remembered. He said, "You've already asked me your question this week. I'm not answering it." He was kidding, but it was he's definitely
he was great.
Yeah, he's definitely on that list as well. So really cool moments for David Andrews. The last thing I wanted to say about that. There's a big log jam. It's probably, he needs to wait 4 years as it is, but it's probably going to take even longer. He's going to wear a red jacket at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scar can wear the red jacket when he gives David Andrews his.
Yeah, I have a really good feeling that that's going to happen. Edelman going in this year. Got to get Gronkowski in. Got to get Vinatieri in. Then there obviously will be other guys like Devin McCourty and Slater and players like that from this iteration. Hightower himself.
Hightower definitely needs to get in.
Yeah, those types of guys. So it might not be.
We've done this before. We've done a bunch of players. You're high on Welker. I'm high on Moss.
Yeah.
Guy who was here a little bit longer. You put Steph Gilmore in?
No, I wouldn't. If you're not going to put Randy Moss in, I don't think you can.
Well,
put
I
Steph
say
in.
that Randy should be in.
Yeah, but I don't think so.
I mean, I think there's an argument more so than like Revis. I've seen some people say they want Revis.
Yeah, I mean, Gilmore had the pass breakup in 17 in the AFC Championship game. He had these interception to seal the Super Bowl in 18 and had a great year in 18, and then defensive player of the year in 19. So that's a good resume. It just was short-lived, But
he packed a lot in there.
Yeah, it's a good resume, and maybe at some point, if we're a decade
down
maybe
the line,
he's down the road when we're starting to run out of
out.
guys a little bit.
Who's next corner you're putting in?
Ooh, next corner I'm putting in. Yeah, it's a good question.
Because they've had a lot of good corners, but oddly enough, like you're probably not putting Aqib Talib in. I loved Aqib Talib when he was. I think we all did.
Yeah.
Malcolm Butler's an interesting one.
Yeah.
He does have arguably one of the 5 biggest plays in franchise history.
Maybe the biggest play in franchise history.
I still think some of those Vinatieri kicks.
I mean, you could definitely make the case.
You can make the case. I almost said biggest.
It's probably
and he was here for a couple, and he was good besides that.
Vinatieri's kick in 36 is probably the biggest. It's the first Super Bowl.
See, I think it's the snowball.
Well, the snowball was the harder kick,
all right,
but just
fair
the
enough.
iconic moment.
But Butler's right there on the fence. Gilmore, I don't think Revis is getting in.
No,
that was just 1 year. That's
just
too short. But you think about some of the great corners they've had, and none of these guys. Yeah. Maybe it's Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully.
So Edelman's going in this year. Gronk obviously has to go in.
Probably Gronk, Edelman, Vinatieri should be the next 3 in whatever order.
Then you have James White. You have Matthew Slater, or Devin McCourty, then Matthew Slater.
So that'll be it's almost like groups of 3s, right? Because Edelman, Gronk, and Vinatieri all retired around this. Well, Vinatieri retired from the NFL around the same time.
Yeah.
Slater, White, McCourty, all retired around the same time. Yeah, and then you'll get into David Andrews.
Yeah. And then you start. Then you start to get into the territory, and maybe we're just forgetting somebody off the top.
Well,
of our
there's
heads,
Bill, but Bill will be his own thing.
Right.
They'll pause it for a year like they did with Brady.
And then you're getting into the territory of it thinning out maybe a little bit, and you either going back to the Dynasty years and somebody that was overlooked, like a Wes Welker maybe, or someone like that.
I still think you have to put Gostowski in. He is the franchise's all-time leading scorer. He won multiple Super Bowls. He was here for a long time. Not before Vinatieri and not before some of those other guys.
Doesn't have the clutchness. His counting
he faded
stats
at the end.
He hit
longevity. He hit some big kicks early in his career. He faded at the end.
I'm not in love
also,
with that
the
one.
video of him being in the stands drinking spiked hot chocolate in a snow game. Legendary.
Yeah, I'm not trying to crap on the guy. Cool guy and good Patriot. You're
gonna downplay him because he's special teams. Are you putting Joe Cardona in?
No,
of course not.
You're going to put Joe Cardona in the Patriots Hall of Fame?
Not soon, but...
What do you mean? What are we doing?
Gostowski, he's the franchise's all-time leading scorer. If that doesn't mean something...
Stick to the Gostowski take. That's a better
If that doesn't mean... Yeah, I know. I was just...
Yeah.
If being the franchise's all-time scorer doesn't mean something, I don't know what we're doing here.
So, if we... and I... Just, we're in the second hour here in June, so just bear with us.
This is what we do. I think people like this stuff.
If
the chat likes it. Somebody asked if you put Asante Samuel in.
No, so the guy that I was thinking about, because I'm trying to think of guys...
Oh, I know who the next corner is.
Okay.
I was only thinking boundary corners. Is Jonathan Jones.
Oh, yeah, he could be in there.
Yeah, it's Jonathan Jones.
So I'm trying to think of guys that maybe came in Dynasty 1.0
that
were overlooking because it's a log jam and there's a lot of guys, and once it starts to thin out...
Antoine Smith.
I think Corey Dillon has a case.
Corey Dillon would be a good one.
It was 2 or 3 years, but he has
so good.
Doesn't he have the single season rushing record for the franchise? I want to say
one of those guys from the 60s has it. He might have it. I'll pull it up.
03 04 he had 1,600 yards, didn't he?
Yeah, you're right. He does. It's him, Curtis Martin, Jim Nance, Stephen Ridley is 4th.
So that again, this is 10 years from now when it starts to thin out.
Yeah.
But once it starts to thin out and you start to talk about some of these guys that you wouldn't consider over Julian Edelman or Adam Vinatieri or Rob Gronkowski, but you might consider on a weaker ballot. I feel like a guy like Corey Dillon, just because of the peak of how good it was.
Well, that's kind of my argument with Gilmore or Moss.
Yeah,
and those guys.
All those guys. Yeah.
The thing that's interesting with Dillon, we know that they will use this as an opportunity to kind of prop guys up for Canton.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many ballots Dillon has left, so maybe the timeline doesn't work out.
I don't know
like,
if Dillon's going to the can.
If you look at the comparable numbers, he statistically, him is actually 3 former Patriots that are on this list, oddly enough. Him, Steven Jackson, and Fred Jackson are like the 3 most productive running backs in NFL history that are not in. And look, somebody has to be the best player that's not in the Hall of Fame. I think it was Jim Plunkett, right, for years, was like the best player that wasn't in. So somebody has to wear that distinction. Corey Dillon is right there on the short list of the best running backs who are not in, who are eligible, right? Like Derrick Henry, obviously, whatever. But like, if they ever really wanted to make that push, that'd be a way to do it.
Yeah.
There is another player from that era that should be, maybe not the Patriots Hall, but Larry Sanders should be a Hall. It's ridiculous Larry Sanders is not in Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, insane.
It's ridiculous that Stanley Morgan's not in the pit.
That's another one. Stanley Morgan's in the Patriots Hall of Fame.
Not
right?
in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
He's in the Patriots one,
100%.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. I
think Stanley Morgan, isn't he like, I think it's minimum 500 catches. I think he's like the all-time leader in yards per reception.
I believe that's
500
that's
catches.
true.
Deep threat.
It's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting conversation to begin with the Patriots Hall of Fame, but it's also really interesting, more interesting to me when we start talking about 10 years from now, post Dynasty's obviously been a little bit of a lull here. So going back and maybe revisiting a Corey Dillon, revisiting a Wes Welker.
We also missed Logan Mankins.
Logan Mankins should definitely be in at some point. Like those guys are all Logan Mankins.
What you're going to have, I mean, we just talked about that interior. Are you putting Joe Tooney in?
Maybe.
You putting Shaq Mason in?
I'm an offensive line guy, so I'm the wrong one
to
ask
a little
about
biased.
this.
I was going to go Nate Solder next, but
I don't think so, but maybe. Tooney's at least, and I don't mean any disrespect to those other two, but like Tooney's at least a good enough player.
Well, so here's the thing with
justify
Tooney.
it. I just don't know if he has like the Patriot accolades, but
he's going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's probably going to be first ballot Pro Football Hall of Fame.
I don't know about that. It's really hard to get in as an offensive lineman, especially
Joe
interior
Tooney.
offensive line.
It is wrong if Joe Tooney is not a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer.
I think he'll get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't know
then
about
second
first
ballot. He's a top 2 guard of his era. It's him and Quentin Nelson. Is anybody else on that list?
Brandon Sheriff, Zach Martin.
Aren't those guys like kind of the era before? Aren't they a little older?
Maybe. Zach Martin's the best offensive lineman I've ever seen.
Okay. Well, Joe Tooney should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'll say that.
Yeah.
A guy you drafted that won multiple Super Bowls here that is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame should probably be in your team Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I compare to like Mike Haynes. Like Mike Haynes is probably, and I don't know entirely like, is Mike Haynes, I think, is thought of more as a Raider than a Patriot, right?
Probably.
But like, he's a great Patriot. He's a great Patriot. And I think he is in the Patriots Hall of Fame, right? He should be.
I would assume so.
I would kind of put him, and this is me, Mike Haynes played before I was alive, so maybe I'm a little bit off here, but that's just my thought.
So I didn't, last thing, I will take some of these phone calls. Yesterday, I got to meet Steve Nelson for the first time, which was really cool. It was kind of like a fanboy moment, and I know I'm young and I didn't.
Mike Haynes is in the Patriots Hall of Fame.
I didn't get to see him play. We weren't born yet and stuff, but it was still kind of cool to meet one of those guys. And Deuce is working on something on the '85 Patriots team. And
underrated team,
and that's going to be a lot of fun. And I thought about this, and I was glad Deuce was already kind of working on this project and kind of beat me to it. But I got into Celtic City, as I'm sure a lot of Celtics fans did. The Patriots don't have the success in their history like the Celtics do, obviously, with all the championships that the Celtics have won. But to me, there's not enough, and I hope people watch or listen to Deuce's thing so that we can keep doing it. And the proof is in the pudding with the numbers to back it up, because there were some intermittently really good pockets of Patriots history.
I mean, that 76 team.
76, 85, obviously the 96 team.
Basically, like prior to the Dynasty, like once every 10 years, they would have a really good team.
Yeah, and a really good group of players. We're talking Stanley Morgan, Mike Haynes, John Hanna, Steve Nelson. Those guys could play, man. Like, those are really good football players. And, obviously Tip, as well. So hopefully, I think it would be serving the fan base in a lot of
Hannah
ways.
was on that team too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Serving the fan base in a lot of ways to educate a lot of the younger fans about those teams, because in a lot of the time you hear about the Patriots history and it's looked down upon, like, oh, they were like the laughing stock of the league or something, like, exaggerated like that. But they had some really good individual players. They had some really good pockets and really good promising teams that now that we're out of the dynasty and we see how hard it is to win, and we see how hard it is to make a Super Bowl and put together teams that are winning playoff caliber teams. My guess is that a lot of younger Patriots fans or fans that latched on when the dynasty started will start to appreciate that more, because of how hard it's been the last couple of years to watch this team. So a lot of those guys, like, we would definitely take an Andre Tippett right about now, but also, like, we would love an 85 season. Yeah, they got killed in the Super Bowl by the Bears, but they made it to a Super Bowl. Like, that was a great accomplishment, and it should be celebrated. So I'm glad that Deuce is doing that. It was cool to meet Steve Nelson yesterday. I totally forgot to do any reads, so I'm going to jump on that now. Based right here in New England, Brunt Workwear makes work boots and apparel that are built for the job site. Their gear is comfortable, durable, and named after the real workers in the trades that help design it. You can even try Brunt out on the job, and if it doesn't blow you away, they let you send it back. Save $10 on your first order at bruntworkwear.com/Pats or with coupon code PATS. Were you the one that told me that the workers working on the practice facility are fans of the show?
Yeah.
Shout out to them.
Yep.
So they're Catch-22 listeners.
I don't know if they all are. A couple of them said they enjoyed the show.
They're probably unfiltered listeners as well, so maybe we can get them some work boots from Brunt Workwear. There you go. All right, let's get to the phones. All right, I'm looking forward to this call, because this call yesterday got some fireworks going on Patriots Unfiltered. So Christian's in L.A. What's up, Christian?
Evan.
See?
I owe you a mea culpa, and I'm man enough to stand up in front of Patriots World and say it. I got triggered when I heard Kendrick Bourne's name, and it's not you, it's Scott Zolak who I'm mad at. So I had a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. I just got so triggered by it that I went hard at you, and I'm man enough to apologize and say, even though you are a Kendrick Bourne homer, you're not the main homer.
That's okay, Christian. You don't have to apologize, but I do want to ask you, sincerely, what do you like? What do you have against Kendrick Bourne, man? Like, what's the problem here?
Yeah, seriously, as a person, I don't know him.
I know it's not personal. I just mean in terms of the football.
Yeah, in terms of football, I get fed up with players who have this potential thing, right? That, like, oh, this guy, yeah, he did this one time, and he's got potential, and we got to hang on to him because, once his knee gets right or once he gets with the right coaching, lots of teams do that. I get it. Kendrick Bourne is the guy on our team now that we've been doing that with, and I think he does have some value, and we should use that value now. Just, get rid of him, maybe get a 7th-round pick for next year or something, but I don't think we should keep this thing of like, okay, yeah, he's got potential. We need somebody. And so let's just keep this guy who's clearly overpaid and just hasn't really done anything. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think where we all stand with Kendrick Bourne is, and I don't want to speak for Alex, but for me personally, I don't think that Kendrick Bourne is a number one receiver by any means. We're talking about a guy that we just think can be productive in that, like, number 3 receiver role or number 2 receiver role, potentially, maybe a little bit too high at number 2, but maybe.
He's a solid complimentary receiver. He's paid like it. I think his base salary is like $5 million this year, something like that. And I'm the first one, Evan, you know this. I'm the first one to get annoyed when people talk up a player on potentially did this one time and blah, blah. But there is a reason that people look for that, because it does happen. I think Kendrick Bourne is an example where, there is a realistic line between he had that great season in 21. Okay, then he goes in the doghouse with Patricia in 22, which we know maybe isn't the most disqualifying thing based on how the team was run that year. Comes out as a great start to 23, tears his ACL.
Okay.
There's a long history of guys maybe not being as good the year after a torn ACL. It's 2 years removed. And here we are, and he's back with the coordinator he had the great season with in 21. I don't think it's exactly grasping at straws to say there's more to Kendrick Bourne than we've seen the last few years. Is he going to be the number one receiver? No, probably not. they need complementary guys too, because that room's not very deep. And he's a guy that's proven he can do it in this league to some extent, and they don't have a lot of guys that have done that.
Right. Yes. Yes. We have no one that we can really count on. He's a $5 million, possibly number 3. Just say that to yourself out loud. A $5 million a year, possibly number 3.
Yeah, that's
number 4 rather.
That's about right.
It's the going rate for it at least now. What else do you got, Christian?
That's really it. I just wanted to apologize.
Oh, you're good.
And get back in right standings with my guys and go. Have a good weekend, you guys. Love it. Love the Pats.
You too, Christian. No problem. You don't have to apologize. I love the fire. I love it when people call in and bring some passion to the phones. Not that anybody doesn't do that, but I liked the call yesterday, Christian. No problem. Max is in Vermont. What's up, Max?
Hey, guys. Question about the wide receiver room. It seems like Diggs will probably play a lot of slot reps and 11 personnel. To me, that means Pop Douglas might feature more of the true role player than an every down guy, like a wide receiver 4 type on 3rd and 10. I'm curious what you all see as the best version of Pop's role in this team. And if he projects more as like a wide receiver 4 low snap count guy, could he be a trade candidate rather than guys like Booty or Bourne, who may be more likely to see the field in 11 personnel? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Max. I think this is it's a question that seems to get picking up some steam with Pop Douglas. I feel like that maybe he's not 100% secure here in terms of maybe it's trade or whatever. I still am with you on this with Pop. I mean, look, I like Pop. We saw him at the Shrine Bowl right before his draft. Yeah. I kind of felt like I was early on him then, so he's kind of one of my guys. I was really excited when they drafted him. I still think there's a role for him. I don't know if he's ever going to be a true high volume, like this guy's going to catch 80-plus passes in a season consistently type of player. But the way that he moves is different. I still believe that. I still think he's one of the more explosive players they have on the team. I still think that he's got that ability, like I said earlier, scheme touches, jet sweeps, motions, screens, things like that, that he can be impactful on. But maybe, to use a comparison that from another team somewhat recently. Like, remember when the Chiefs had Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman? And Tyreek Hill was the guy, and Mecole Hardman was kind of in the same mold, but sort of the secondary guy, right, to that mix. Like, maybe that's Pop Douglas's future, is like Kyle Williams is sort of not necessarily Tyreek Hill good, but like Kyle Williams or Stefon Diggs or someone like that is truly the number one option in the offense. And then Pop Douglas is just a kind of energizer bunny. That's that secondary guy within the framework. That might be where he's best, like a super sub receiver. Might be his best.
I don't think they can afford to part ways with speed. Not at that position, not right now. I just don't think they can.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to some of these emails. This one is from Jordan. Patriots Nation is his thing, and that gave me. I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what that is, but sounds interesting. Jordan from Ohio. He asks, give me your breakout player on offense and defense for the Patriots. So offense first. Do you have a breakout player for this season?
I mean, I think it has to be Drake May by default, right? You need that year 2 jump for them to take the leap. You know what? Screw it. I'll just go with theme of day. Pop Douglas. I think he's going to be a good fit in Josh McDaniels' offense, and I think he improves on last year. Yeah,
I hope it's Drake May. Like, if this is headed in the right direction, it should be Drake May. It's kind of not unfair, but just like, I don't know if rookies really qualify for this sort of thing.
I think they do.
So I think if I didn't say Drake May, I'd have to say one of the skill players. Rookies,
Travion Henderson.
or Kyle Williams, yeah. What about on defense?
Breakout player on defense, I'm going to go with, Pop Douglas, can't wait. That's literally who I said last year. You know what? I'm going to go with Robert Spillane. I just think that signing kind of went under the radar because they signed Milton Williams a few hours later and all that, but I think people are going to be really impressed with Robert Spillane.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Spillane's going to be a hair on fire type of guy that people are really going to like. Can I say Keon White? Like, has Keon White already broken out?
Yeah,
he had a productive year last year.
He is another level he can get to.
I wonder if there's another level that he can get to as well, and I'm excited to see him in this defense because I think this defense is going to correct for his aggressiveness. Like, it's not going to be aggressive outside
Right.
the scheme. It's going to be aggressive inside the scheme because they're going to want him to be inherently aggressive, and then other people are going to be assigned to make him right when he is over aggressive and he does shoot a gap or he does come out of a rush lane or something like that. So I think Keon White will have another level because I think he's a better scheme fit within what they're going to do now. This question is from Emery, and he said, Evan, were you the reporter who asked McDaniels yesterday about putting more on Drake's plate at the line of scrimmage? I was the reporter that asked him that question, actually. And then he said, I know that has been a concern of yours, and I'm curious to get your take on McDaniels saying it was overblown. Yeah, he did say that in response to that question. I asked him, what is the approach? Not necessarily about it being right or wrong, but what is the approach in terms of building up to it, right? Like, you don't want to all of a sudden go into a practice and think Drake May is going to be Tom Brady and you're 16 and like put everything on his plate. What the build up to, what's the build up to it? The two things that McDaniel said that stood out in his answer. One, he did say that he thought it was kind of an overblown talking point about his offense and about this offense. Said that someone would have to do it, whether it was the center or it was the quarterback. It's going to be on somebody's plate to make the calls, right? So they're going to have to teach somebody how to do it. Now, I would counter with center. It's probably a little bit easier. There's maybe a little bit less on your plate than at quarterback. Not maybe. There is a lot less on your plate than at quarterback, but not here nor there. The other thing that he said that I thought was interesting was that he feels like Drake May's kind of already got it. Like, he's grasped it quickly and is learning it quickly, and he feel pretty comfortable with where he's at with that. So that was me, though, that asked that question. How do you feel about that whole thing? Am I making too much out of it?
I mean, it's a factor. I think it's still early.
Yeah.
But it's a factor.
Yeah, I agree.
I asked Ashton Grant the same question.
What did he say?
Pretty much the same thing McDaniel said.
Yeah, overblown.
Well, the second part about, he's picking it up and it's not getting the reps and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, okay. All right, logistical question here from Connor from St. Paul, Minnesota. And he was wondering if the joint practices in the Twin Cities will be open to the public. And the answer, as far as I know, and this is not, I'm not saying that I know for a fact by any means, but just based off experience, I would think yes. Those practices have always, in my experience, those have always been open to the public.
I would assume it's however the Vikings, I don't know how the Vikings do training camp. I would assume it's however the Vikings usually do training camp for the fans.
Because
I know some like here it's free, right? Some places you have to actually get a ticket or whatever.
Oh yeah, or enter like a lottery in Buffalo or whatever. I have no idea the definitive answer to that question, but I've been told in the past that joint practices are considered training camp, and because of that, it's always open to the public.
Yeah.
So usually that's been the case. We had a great, was it last year we were in Green? No, it was 2 years ago we were in Green Bay. Those joint practices in Green Bay were awesome because they have a great facility right across the street from Lambeau Field, and it's almost like a high school stadium. Like there's bleachers and everything, and there's a field in the middle. It's literally like a high school football stadium. And so it was like a raucous crowd. Like, it was like hostile. You could feel that there was like some hostility towards the Patriots. And it is pretty cool. So that was very cool. All right. Here's an email from Jeremiah, who I think is on your side on the Gostkowski debate.
Okay.
Alex, so saying Gostkowski shouldn't be in the Patriots Hall of Fame due to not having memorable kicks like Vinatieri, I understand, but statistically, Gostkowski was the best kicker for the Patriots. Yeah, that's true. He has the stats. Now, this is not anything against the early 2000s Patriots teams, who were obviously wagons, but they were scoring at a much different clip once Gostkowski became the kicker. Like, Gostkowski has baked in there like the 2007 Patriots team. He has
still hit the kicks.
He has 2010, 20. Yeah, but how many of those were extra points?
Still hit them.
This is okay. So he hit the old extra point.
No, when did they move it back?
It may be later on in his career, and I actually think when they moved it back, it was kind of a problem for him, wasn't it? It was like a mental.
They moved
hurdle.
the extra point back. It's 2015. I thought it was much longer ago than that.
Yeah, that sounds right. So that's my biggest thing with like counting stats for kickers, like points and that sort of thing, is that a lot of that is predicated on the offenses that you're playing.
You still have to hit the kicks. You have that many
come on.
more
And he's making
opportunities
a
to
30-yard
miss.
extra point. Like if he's making 1,000 of those, then you're the leading scorer. Also, how they calculate it is just it's always going to be a kicker. Does any team in the NFL's leading scorer not a kicker?
I have no idea.
The answer is
Maybe
no.
the Ravens or the Bills.
Who are the Ravens or the Bills? Like
Quarterback.
Well, quarterback they don't count
That's
passing
true.
touchdowns.
Yeah, no, maybe not. I know Tomlinson led the Chargers that one insane year, but you still have to hit the kicks. I don't know. You still have to hit the kicks. You have that many more opportunities to miss. You're under that much more scrutiny. I think it matters. I think there's something to be said even at that position for volume and longevity.
I agree with longevity on in any sport at any position. Longevity is impressive to me, but I think the answer to my own question is all 32 teams' leading scorer in franchise history has got to be a kicker. Just the way they calculate.
Well, because kickers also play longer.
Right, but it's just rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, and then kicking. Like those are the only way that you score points because they don't count passing touchdowns the same. So I don't know.
Defensive scores.
Okay, but you're not going to get enough defensive scores to be the leading
You might if
scorer.
you're really good.
Oh my God, stop it. All right, want to play an over-under game while you look that up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so here's a little over-under for Patriots, over-unders and individual players. Milton Williams, 5.5 sacks, over-under.
Under, because I think he's going to be more the
Pressure guy
than the cleanup guy. Like, I think he's going to be impactful. That's the way they're going to play defense. That's a high number for that position.
I'm going to go over because I'm going to say he's going to have 6.
So I'm like, it's a good number. It's like there.
6 is a good number.
I think you're going to see more like Kayvon Chase on cleaning up what Milton Williams and Christian Barmore cause.
Yeah.
Give me like a pressure number for him.
Okay.
That's more how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, give me a pressure number for him.
60. I think 60 is a good number. Keon White had 45 last year.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, like I think, in that conversation, it's not gonna. If you're just reading a regular box score, it's not gonna look sexy. I think he makes an impact, but I don't think his sack number is gonna be very high.
Christian Gonzalez, 1.5 picks. Pick sixes.
Oh.
Pick sixes. Sorry, I was like
Over.
picks.
You know what?
I
Screw
go
it. Over. 2 pick sixes. Over.
I'd say he had 1 last year. I think.
Right.
And then he had the fumble recovery touchdown.
Carlton Davis is gonna help him.
I don't know. Was that a fumble
more.
recovery touchdown and a pick six? It might have just
Which
been
one?
the fumble recovery. Christian Gonzalez might have just been a fumble recovery touchdown last year.
He had a fumble recovery touchdown.
Yeah, against Miami, but I don't know.
I'll say over. I think Carlton Davis is gonna help him.
Agreed. I'm gonna say over as well because the same reason. We talked about this. Carlton Davis hasn't been out at practice the last couple practices we've been at. But we talked about this when he was out there on that first one. Like having a guy like Carlton Davis that in some games can just shadow an opponent's top receiver that allows Christian Gonzalez to make more plays on the ball,
Right.
kind of be more of like almost playing like free safety, but playing it as a corner and seeing the ball more and making more plays on it, I think is in play based off of having Carlton Davis, and I think that would help him make some more impact plays. There's obviously a ton of value in him shadowing and taking guys out of the game completely, but maybe a next step for Christian Gonzalez is making those like splash plays on the football, and maybe Carlton Davis allows him to do that. Robert Spillane, 105 tackles. So he had over this, I believe, last year.
Tavai had 115, right?
High, over 105. I
in that role last year, I'll say over.
Yeah, I'm going to say over as well. Defense points per game allowed, 21.5. So this would be like a top 15-ish defense in the league.
Yeah, I think they're like right at So I did a show on the Sports Hub recently where I had them at 21. So I guess I have to say under, but I also think they're going to play relatively up tempo. I think they might play some games that are, they're not going to do much short in a game.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, over under. I think they allow more than 21.5 points per game, but it's like just barely.
Yeah, I would say
again, that's a good number.
22-ish is maybe where I'm at with them. So I go over. Stefon Diggs, 11.5 games played. I'm going over here.
Over.
Yeah, I think he's going to play more. Ramondre Stevenson, 750 rushing yards. I'm going to say it all depends. Like if they don't have leads, then he's not going to go over that, right?
What was it?
750
for Stevenson.
Yeah, I'm going to say under.
Under.
Too much
Josh,
Travion Henderson.
And Josh is too good about balancing the workloads. I'm going to say under.
Henderson, 555 receptions.
Well, I had that take earlier that a
Yeah.
running back is going to be top 3 on the team, and he's probably the guy to do it. So I think I have to say over.
I'm going to say over as well.
But that's another really good number. I think he's like 55, 65, somewhere in that range. That's another good number.
A couple Drake May ones here to wrap it.
Yeah.
3,500 passing yards.
What do you have last year?
Probably right around 3,000. But he didn't play every game.
Right, I'll go over.
I hope it's over. I'm going to say...
I'll say over. If you,
That's a good
if you tell
number.
me total yards, I'll definitely say over.
That's a good number. 3,500 is like right where the sweet spot. I'm going to say over. I'm going to be optimistic today. 4.5 rushing touchdowns.
Over on that.
I hope it's over. I hope that's in their back pocket going
They didn't
over.
have passing touchdowns?
Didn't have passing
I was going to say
touchdowns.
under on passing touchdowns.
Did not.
I think they're going to be running the ball in from the 5 a lot.
I
don't think he's going to throw a lot of red zone touchdowns. I think that's going to be his touchdown passes are going to be long ones. When they get inside the 10, and I know the red zone's the 20, but when they get inside the 10, it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson behind a fullback and maybe Drake May behind a fullback. Like, I don't think they're throwing the ball a lot down there.
Yeah, this is a good question from Jeff. We only have a couple minutes, but we probably could unpack this even more.
Yeah.
But we were talking earlier about buying some West Coast influence in this offense, and he was asking me about building the scheme and like building plays off of each other, sequencing plays off of each other, which has been a criticism of mine of their offenses for a couple of years now. And he makes a good point. If they're going to run West Coast run schemes, duo, outside zone, things like that, those don't marry to the gap play action plays, right? Those are different types of play action plays.
Right.
It's a good point. I wonder if that type of stuff is always going to be game plan with McDaniels. So maybe one week it's more West Coast flavor than another week where they feel like their biggest advantage is running right at a team and getting downhill. It might be more that infused, but it will definitely be on my radar in season when I'm watching tape of their offense. Are they marrying gap runs with gap play action and outside zone runs or zone runs with zone play action, or how do they go about that? That's a good question there, and something that I definitely look for, on tape when I watch offenses. I think the best offenses in the league are the ones that run the same play for like 75% of the play, and then all of a sudden
And then
it's
at the
something,
last second,
it's something different. Though that's what the best play callers sequence together. That's what the best play designers sequence together as well. That's what makes me always fall in love with the Shanahan offenses. That's what they do best. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, like those guys are absolute wizards at. This looks like it's outside zone. Looks like it. Oh, it's play action. It's not, that's why that works. That's really how the crux of how that works. Question from Bart in Poland. This one is a good question that I'm excited about for our show's purposes. Is you're talking a little bit about the Vikings, and you mentioned Kevin O'Connell earlier, and he said, do the Vikings have the best supporting cast in the NFL? And his question then also follows with J.J. McCarthy. And does he succeed in Minnesota? J.J. McCarthy's success or failure, especially comparing and contrasting to Drake May, this show is that our credibility is kind of on the line a little bit. We need J.J. I don't wish anything bad on J.J. McCarthy, but we kind of need J.J. McCarthy to be bad.
Well, what did I say? If you're going to draft J.J. McCarthy, you need to be someone with a good offensive coach, strong surrounding cast, and sit him for a year.
Yeah.
They were kind of forced into that third thing. They kind of did exactly what we said they needed to do with him.
Yeah.
So he got the best landing spot of any of the rookie quarterbacks last year. He obviously got hurt, but he should make the most of that opportunity.
Yeah,
But he does. It's Daniel Jones competing with him, right? Like they brought in some. They're not sold on.
No, Dan Jones in Indianapolis.
No, who did they? They brought in somebody like semi-legit to compete with him.
I don't know who. Daniel Jones is competing with Anthony Richardson.
That's what it was. Yeah,
Anthony Richardson his career might be as a starter.
Oh, Sam Howell.
No, J.J. McCarthy is going to start in Minnesota, and after watching what O'Connell did with Sam Darnold, it's hard to imagine that he's going to stink. But
it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco all over again.
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison. I think
that was my comp for.
He's got a little bit more arm
Garoppolo.
talent than Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo had the quick release and like the pillowy throws and stuff like that down, but I think J.J. McCarthy's got a little bit more of a cannon.
It's going to be Jimmy G and. So that would make Max Brosmer Brock Purdy. which would be very fun. UNH guy.
Well, I'm just looking forward. You know, I didn't get to see him last year because he got hurt. It's a great litmus test for us as people that try to evaluate the draft every year. And like, was I right or wrong about JJ McCarthy?
But it's also, we've got to factor in, he's throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and they've got TJ Hawkinson at tight end with what's his name at left tackle, Christian Darrisaw at left tackle.
Back from injury, yeah.
Not exactly the same group Drake May was working with as a rookie.
No.
So
now, to answer the best supporting cast question really quick, I think it's Philadelphia, and it's not even particularly close. I miss who's got a good one. You know, Jefferson's arguably the best player in the league, or best receiver in the league, I should say. But A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley.
Madden cover athlete, Saquon Barkley.
With the best offensive line in football. That's the best set by far. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Perfect timing there with that ending right there. So that's a pro timing right there. So we'll be back next week. There is minicamp practice scheduled for Wednesday of next week, so we might be later in the afternoon like we were a couple weeks ago when there was an OTA. So make sure to follow both of us or follow Patriots.com's Twitter handle as well. We'll have you updated on times and all that good stuff because we might have to move it around a little bit to accommodate minicamp. But the cool part about that is that we'll have a ton to talk about because we'll have hopefully 3 days of minicamp to digest on the show. So that could be a 2 hour, that could be a meaty show. That could be a full 2 hours of all football. So we're looking forward to that. Until then, have a great week, rest of your week, great weekend, and we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Hey, this is Alex. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you really want to help us, make sure you like us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you follow us on the New England Patriots YouTube channel to see this show and everything else we do here at the Patriots. Thanks a lot.